Mr. Simpkins, Dr. Armstead, Mrs. McCray, Mr. Bean, and Mrs. Gordon. I would very much like to ask Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Gordon, Mr. Armstead, and Mr. Simpkins to repeat after me as we go through the process of swearing you in. I, and if you would repeat your name, please.
I, Sandy.
I am Major Armstead.
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully discharge
Do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will
that I will
faithfully
faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education,
Board of Education
Madison
in
District
Madison,
162.
District 162.
You're welcome to continue to read. We'll
Cook
read
County,
together. How about that? Madison School District 162, Cook County, Illinois, in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the bylaws of the State of Illinois, to the best of my ability. Are we of one accord?
Yes.
We are.
Yes.
I further swear or affirm that I shall respect taxpayer interests
By serving as a
taxpayer
supervisor of the school district's assets.
I shall
Shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board, while respecting the privacy of students and employees. I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made by only
Majority
of a vote at a public board meeting.
board meeting.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels. As part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the district. I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Madison District 162. I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework.
I shall strive
To ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement in all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law. I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students in our community schools to advance the vision for Madison District 162. And I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the board has created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
Are we all of one accord? Let me
Yes.
say for the record, this is the first time that we have sworn a board in by Zoom, and each of us has a different connection. So it's a little bit more difficult, but let me say this, we have 3,000 children that have learned to do that perfectly in the last year or so. So thank you very much. Our next function is to nominate officers for the board. Are there recommendations and nominations for the board presidency? Nominations are now open for the board presidency. Mr. Murphy.
Yes, I nominate Felix Simpkins for board president.
Second,
Are there other nominations for Mr. Simpkins? We have a nomination and a second. Are there other nominations, please? Nominations are now closed. Congratulations, Mr. Simpkins. How are you? Thank you, thank you. Nominations for board vice president. Is there a nomination?
Mr. Simpkins, you're muted. There you go.
I nominate Ron Bean as board vice president.
There's a nomination. Is there a second? Mr. Murphy as seconding. Is there another nomination for board vice president? Another nomination for board vice president. Nominations are now closed. Congratulations, Mr. Bean.
Thank you.
Thank you. A board secretary, are there nominations for the position of secretary?
Madam Superintendent, I'd like to nominate Kevin Murphy as our board secretary.
Thank you, Mrs. Gordon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Simpkins. Are there other nominations for the position of secretary? Other nominations? Congratulations. Mr. Murphy, congratulations. Mr. Simpkins,
Yes, Dr. Davis.
I don't know who's, Karen, do you have a question, a comment? I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry. No. Mr. Simpkins, I now officially turn the meeting over to you. Once again, congratulations, Mr. Simpkins, Mr. Bean, and Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. We appreciate you. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to read, pursuant to the requirements of the State of Illinois' Open Meeting Act, because Governor Pritzker's declaration remains in effect, finding that all counties of the state of Illinois are disaster areas due to the health concerns related to COVID-19. It has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent. Accordingly, the meeting of Madison School District 162 Board of Education this evening will be conducted with board members attending the meeting via audio-video conference rather than being present in person. Our superintendent, Dr. Blondine Y. Davis, is physically present at our regular meeting place, our school district boardroom at 4601 Sauk Trail in Richard Park, Illinois. Could we please call this meeting to order? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bean,
Present.
Mrs. Gordon,
Here.
Mrs. McCray,
Present.
Mr. Murphy,
Present.
Mrs. Rodman McCray, Dr. Armstead,
Present.
Mr. Simpkins.
Present. At this time, we'll have communications and announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President. Southland College Prep National Honor Society will have its induction in person on May 14th at 6:30 p.m. The 162 Board of Education next meeting is scheduled for May 18th. Southland College Prep's graduation will be done a little differently, but it will air May 29th. Memorial Day, no school. We begin our 2-week early dismissal schedule June 1st through June 4th. The last day of school officially for our students is June 3rd. We close with Teacher Institute Day on June 4th. And then the Madison School District 162 graduation is June 19th. If I could, Mr. President, I'd like to comment on the graduation, please.
Yes, Dr. Davis, please.
But we're actually in, although you're not, our our graduation arena, so to speak. But what we intend to do is a socially distanced graduation. It's a large class, but we will seat 12 of our students, and they will have the opportunity to bring 4 parents with them. We are still honoring the CDC requirements, which indicate that we would be 6 feet apart. I think it's going to be a beautiful, I know it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful graduation. But my sense is that our community is still being very careful. And we know that the best thing to do is to bring students in small segments. I did enjoy last year, I have to be very honest with you. We did a 1-to-1 graduation. It was a point in which I actually had the time to talk to each individual student. So I treasure that, but I know that in their hearts, they really want to have their friends with them. And so we will not have a large group, but we will have 12 graduates. Because it's a large class, it will take us 8 days with 3 graduations a day, but that doesn't matter. What matters is creating the memory. What matters is that the community knows that we feel their dedication, but we also know that there's a desire to be safe. So that is our graduation format. And of course, I'll be communicating with you in writing, but our parents are already aware of the structure and I think supportive of it. Mr. Simpkins.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. That's awesome. I just love how the district and your team adjust. It's quite a time for us, and all school districts, and to be able to make that adjustment to give the parents something to hold on to and to celebrate. That's awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
At this time, we'll receive audience to visitors pertaining to the agenda only.
No, sir.
Thank you. Hearing none, can we have an approval of the consent agenda?
President,
Mr. Bean.
move to approve the consent agenda dated April 20, 2021, and every item contained therein.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, if I could, please, Mr. President, I'd like to bring to the attention of the board that the support personnel who have less than 10 years have been for the past 20 years non-renewed, and you see a list of their names. I also say, for benefit of the minutes, that there's never been an occasion that we have not called them back. And so really, I consider this to be pro forma. There's also a list of teachers who are non-renewed first, second, and third year teachers from various schools. And there's one fourth year probationary teacher that's also non-renewed. But on another note, David Antwi, I discussed David a couple of board meetings ago. He graduated from Southland, lives in the community in Richton Park, went away to college, did extremely well. His major was cybersecurity, I believe, Mr. Evans.
Oh, wow.
And he came to work for us.
Wow.
During this time of COVID, I think that you're aware that last summer, Mr. Evans, Mr. Lights, and team distributed about 3,000 devices as we got ready for this thing called remote education. David, it's just a pleasure to have him with us, but not just a pleasure, he's very, very knowledgeable. But what we tell all of our young people is when an opportunity comes, you have to take it. You can't always stay safe within the family. And an opportunity was offered to him. And so he now has his dream job out there in the big picture world. And so we acknowledge his resignation, but is to do what he was trained for. So we're very happy with him. I'm not happy about accepting the resignation of Mrs. Harrigan, who, as you know, was just a wonderful, wonderful, one of the best choral music teachers I've ever seen. But Mrs. Harrigan has been away from us since August of last year, and it is now time for us to staff. As you well know, we intend to come back with person-to-person summer school, and then we're looking forward to our opening on the third week in August. And so the question was asked of her, are you willing to come back? And so it's with regret I accept her resignation, but I held it for just a few days in my drawer thinking, and reached out to her and said, are you sure? But we know that sometimes you have to do what's in your heart, but what I really think is in Mrs. Harrigan's heart, and she'll find that out as time goes on, are these children. I think she did a magnificent job, but we do accept her resignation. I'd like to ask Craig Engler to comment on policy number 4008, please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Davis. Good evening, Board of Education.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In your packet in tab 4, you will see a general personnel policy. This is a policy that just states that we do a number of trainings each year with our staff. These are trainings that we're already doing with the staff on an annual or sometimes biannual basis. And but we do need to have a policy on file to memorialize that. So again, this is not a new practice necessarily, but it is new in terms of policy.
Thank you, Mr. Englert. We're canceling our May 11th meeting As you well know, it's not possible for us to bring together hundreds of people. Normally, we would have a wonderful celebration, 2-month wonderful celebrations in the month of May. We will be sending out certificates indicating and congratulating those students who have straight A's, but we will not be bringing everyone together. So there's no need to have a meeting. But Kickard Bus Company, Mr. Englert, this has been an interesting year in terms of our bus company, but I'd like to ask him to comment on the renewal, but also on a potential problem that we're anticipating having. Thank you.
Yes, the board is asked this evening to approve the one-year contract renewal for Kickard School Bus for 2 pieces. One is the general transportation services. And if you recall, the district has a second contract with Kickard for the transportation of McKinney. Kickard is asking for a 2.5% increase, which I believe is reasonable. They, along with a lot of businesses, are experiencing difficulties, and this is what Dr. Davis is referring to. I'll talk a little more about difficulties in getting staff, essentially. And so it's having some pressure on wages. And as we all know, of course, gas prices are going up too. So 2.5% is really not out of line, I don't believe, in terms of the increase. One of the things that we're experiencing this year, and keep in mind, not all the districts that Kickard transports for are in session right now. One of the things that we're experiencing is we're still experiencing issues with driver shortages. And so on a daily basis, we have 1 or 2 routes, or we're having to double up coverage in some way in order to make those work. Some conversation that we had with them recently about the fall was just about making sure that they're going to have adequate staffing for the fall. They indicated to us that they are actually concerned about that. And they have not said that to me so early in the year before. I mean, transportation staffing is always an issue, always has been, trying to get and keep enough drivers and retain them. But they are actually sounding the alarms now, saying we are concerned about the fall. So that is something that we're watching. And we'll be working with them on that and doing what we can to make sure that obviously that we have enough routes and they're covered, of course, and then keeping up to date on where that's at. Some things that they're experiencing, one is they still have a number of drivers out on unemployment. There are some incentives to remain on unemployment, and so that's one thing that's complicating this. And the other is just having the ability to hire and recruit drivers right now.
Mr. Simpkins, that concludes our comments, but we certainly are prepared to answer questions about the consent agenda, please.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Any questions from board members regarding the consent agenda?
What would be the plan B?
Plan B will not be to buy buses again. I was not here then, but I know that this district did own buses and bus barns, and but plan B, I have to be honest with you, has yet to be worked out. It's not just a matter of money, but what we anticipate is that the unemployment compensation will expire, and therefore people will be available for these kinds of jobs. And so we're monitoring, but if you wanted to go to a plan B, and I'm absolutely not saying we're going to do this, we could stagger our bus times, but I'm simply answering a question. I'm not recommending that we stagger bus times. I think we need to wait until after June 30th and then see where we are in terms of status, because I think that the need for income will increase the numbers of drivers who are available.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bean,
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Aye.
Mr. Murphy,
Aye.
Dr. Armstead,
Aye.
Mr. Simpkins.
Aye. At this time, we'll entertain the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Simpkins. We'll begin with a financial report from Craig Englert.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I'm going to start where I started last month, actually, and that's talking about the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER, as we're becoming to know it. Eric, if you can go to the next slide there. I'm going to recap a couple of things we talked about last month and then provide some additional information with regard to that third item there, which is ESSER 3. So ESSER is, as I said, is just a stimulus program from the federal stimulus programs. The various programs have been passed since March of 2020. So the first one was passed in March of 2020 and it provided $13.2 billion for K-12 education. And ESSER 2 provided $54 billion. That was passed in January. And just most recently is ESSER 3, which they've actually just changed the name to ARP ESSER. And that is $128.6 billion for K-12 education. So what does that mean for District 162? ESSER 1, as you know, was a little over $800,000 the district received for that. ESSER 2, just over 3.1 million. Last month, I reported to you, I was estimating about $6.9 million for the third ESSER program. And we do have the final allocation now at 7.1 million. So it came a little higher than what I had originally projected. So all of these uses are very similar. They all have to be used for something COVID related, whether it be responding to COVID, and mitigating COVID in the future, the spread of germs. It can be used for learning loss, anything related to the COVID pandemic in any way. So the ESSER 1 funds, those are the funds that were available last March, and we talked about this last month. I listed for you there the items that were purchased with those funds. Cadre subs we utilized within our school buildings this year, summer learning, masks, of course, and other PPE. And the big ticket items, of course, were technology, the wireless access points, the Chromebooks that we purchased last year, the Chromebook charging carts, and the data wiring, so we could get all the students one-to-one. ESSER 2 is that second one that became available March 13th. And we've just started utilizing these funds. Last month, the board approved additional Chromebooks so we can bring back some of the laptops that we had to put into service this year, and as well as teacher laptops. And that's all coming from those ESSER 2 funds. The third item, bipolar ionization, is actually on the agenda this evening. I'm going to ask Mr. Walczak or I think Mr. Petrello from Archon is here actually to talk about that.
Good evening, Dr. Davis, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about bipolar ionization. It's sort of a relatively new technology that definitely for me, but I'll give you a general synopsis. But basically this, there's an ion tube that will be inserted into the mechanical equipment. And this ion tube charges the oxygen with ions. And generally speaking, these ions will actually penetrate the cell of any microbe or bacteria or virus, and it will burst and destroy the cell. It's a technology that's been proven. It's been working very well. It just so happens we are installing it at the Archon office this week as well. We have 5 rooftop units that we're installing it in. So I guess in layman's terms, that's how that works. Any questions?
Does that have to be replaced?
The maintenance on it is actually very low. In general terms, it cleans itself. So there is some maintenance, but it's minimal.
Great.
So Mr. Gaspar, just so that we'll be clear, because I am going to ask you and Mr. Walczak to talk with the teachers. We obviously know what happened this past year, and we did very well, I think. But now we're adding to our filtration system, so in order to filter out, as I understand it, not only 90-some% of the germs, odors, et cetera, and we're going to do this with all 8 of our buildings. Is that right?
That's correct. It happens at all 8 of the buildings. All the equipment where air circulates will have this technology in it.
Okay. Mr. Simpkins, this is something new, so are there any questions from any of the board members about this process?
I have-
Go ahead, Ms. Gordon.
Mr. Simpkins, I was just wondering, will it be able to be installed before summer school? Or will it be an ongoing thing right now while we're in session?
So it will be installed over the course of the entire summer.
Okay,
It'll be complete by summer, by the end of the summer.
Okay, great.
We'll work around summer school. Essentially, we will have 3 buildings that we don't have summer school at. We'll start in those, and then once summer school ends, we'll work into those, and we'll also have some flexibility to where we can, work after summer school, because they're typically out earlier than we are. So we'll rotate through it, but we will get all the schools done before we come back in August.
Thank you.
Any other board member?
Yes, one question. Is this run in concurrent with the air conditioning system, or this is a system that works independently of the heating and the cooling system?
No, it's within the equipment. So as the air circulates, for whether it's heating or it's cooling, it is active.
So basically, this is a added safety measure to ensure the quality of the air and killing any microbes or any issues that might be found in the air, but it gives us a better quality of air within all of our buildings.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you. That's great.
Mr. Simpkins, what I think is very interesting, I know what's in our minds, and we won't even call the word tonight.
No,
But,
we won't.
But what about those teachers and students that have allergies? All right, so they will not be as affected by pollen because we'll be filtering all of that out. So I see a number of advantages of adding this to all of our systems. But since Mr. Wozak is here, Mr. Wozak, what other plans do you have for this summer? Because we're doing a lot.
Well, we do have a few things we're working on. In addition to the bipolar, obviously is the big one because it will make the biggest impact. Then the first one we'll be starting will be Richmond Square's roof. I'm sure everybody remembers we had an incredibly cold winter with a lot of ice. I'm sure everybody experienced that on some of their homes as well. And the roof over at Richmond Square is actually at its end of serviceable life. But it also got damaged with a lot of ice. And I want to say last count we had, I think, 5 classrooms that were leaking on the east wing. Bids are already in. I think contracts are being let tonight, I think. So we'll be putting a new roof on the east wing of the Richmond Square. Something we're still in process on is bathroom renovations. We're going to do our best to get Sauk student bathrooms, Illinois student bathrooms, and Arcadia student bathrooms. Now, Illinois and Arcadia will be a little bit different because it's not going to be all the student bathrooms. It's just going to be the older ones because we do have 2 wings at Arcadia, which the bathrooms are newer in. So we're going to focus on the ones that are, 30 odd years old, 40 years old, what have you. It should all be part of the ESSER program. The touchless, soap and hand wash and, new fixtures. It's basically going to be a complete gut of the bathrooms, plumbing within the bathroom, not obviously, outside. God, I'm drawing the blank. Craig, help.
Are we getting new signs, Mr. Wozak?
Sure.
I just thought I would ask.
Yeah, I do not have pricing on it yet, but I do have a contact. I've started. That's about as far as I've gotten though.
Mr. Simpkins, I would love when anyone comes close to any of our buildings, not this one, this takes up a whole block, and so everybody knows what it is, but that they would see beautiful signs that are unique to each one of our communities. So that's one of our goals also for the summer. But in the process of doing this, we also intend to have 600 to 800 students in summer school throughout our various buildings. A few of them, as Mr. Wozak and Mr. Gaspar said, they will have to close down, but we will have a majority of them. Something that I did several years ago that I enjoy because, my day is not made unless I see as many students as possible. We had 8th grade students for summer school in this building, and why not? Let's bring them back. So therefore, in addition to the high school students, we're also going to bring our 8th graders here for the summer program, and it's a delight to have them. But I also feel in another way, it probably raises the aspiration level of the eighth graders because they're involved with the high school students. So I think it's a beautiful mix, but I do know that it worked fabulously a couple of years ago when we did that. So any other questions for Mr. Walzak or Mr. Gaspar?
Actually, for Craig, with this work, at least with the bipolar ion, is some of this covered through the federal funding that we receive for particularly or specifically for mitigating COVID and some of the safety measures that'll be taken?
I'm sorry, Mr. Simpkins, I couldn't hear all of that. Could you say it one more time?
Some of the funding that we have, are we using capital funds, or is this some of the federal funding or CARES funding we're going to use to cover some of the cost of the new ventilation and some of the other work that's going to take place for the summer?
Sure, thank you. So, yeah, so the bipolar ionization that is specifically covered by the federal ESSER funds. So that'll be federally funded. The replacement of the roof at Richmond Square is, again, not really related to COVID, so that wouldn't be applicable. There's about $169,000 remaining in the construction fund from the bond we issued last year. So we'll utilize that along with some operations and maintenance funds to do the roof project over there. The bathroom projects, we have had some conversations with the Illinois State Board of Education with regard to use of the ESSER funds because it's very, there's a lot of various uses for those funds. And they did indicate that the bathroom projects, as Mr. Walzak described, would be a proper use of those funds.
Awesome.
And
Right.
we have the touchless soap dispensers and sinks and dryers and all those kinds of things, partitions, wider areas in those bathrooms. So it would qualify for the ESSER funding.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Davis.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Engler, if you continue.
Sure, Mr. Lights, if you would mind putting back up the slides for me. Okay, so we talked about ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and now they've changed the name of ESSER 3 to ARP ESSER, which is the American Recovery Program. And so that is the large one. That is the one that I indicated we did receive our final allocation number, which is just over $7.1 million. Those funds will be available for use, or I should say to be budgeted at least, starting July 1st. I don't anticipate using those July 1st yet. The district has until September of 2024 to utilize those funds. Again, the same uses. There's a couple of slight differences with this grant, however. They are saying that at least 20% must be used to address learning losses in some way. And they give a number of examples for that in terms of tutoring, summer school, et cetera. Anything that the district can use to address learning losses that may have occurred during the time that schools were closed or on remote learning. The other stipulation they put into this piece is that within 30 days of receiving the funds, the district must make available on its website its plan for safe return to in-person instruction. As you know, we have had a plan in place since last fall, actually really since last summer, before summer school started, and that's always been on the district website. The one thing that they're asking for now is that there will be a public hearing on that plan before it is finalized for the fall. So we anticipate bringing that to you sometime this summer. The other things they added to this piece, this third ESSER grant, is a maintenance of equity provision. This is something that we have not seen in previous grants. And essentially what it says is districts cannot reduce their per pupil funding for any high poverty schools. They have not given us any specific definitions on how this is going to be calculated. So we're still waiting guidance on that. And the last thing they added just recently is that they're also adding $100 million to the IDEA grant. IDEA grant is a grant the district receives every year. It's federal funding for special education. So the state of Illinois is going to see a $100 million increase in that grant, as I understand it. I do not know how that will be allocated to District 162, but obviously I would anticipate increases in IDEA funding for the upcoming school year as a result of this. Before I move on, any questions on any of the ESSER funding? Okay, at the beginning of the year, when we put together the budget, I did mention that because things were so unknown at the time, it was likely we'd probably be doing a budget amendment at some point during the year. At that time, we didn't know how much we were going to be in-person instruction versus remote, what kind of spending we'd have for PPE, et cetera. So a number of things have transpired during the year that are different what was originally budgeted. As we were just talking about, we have numerous grants. In addition to those ESSER grants, we have the COPS grant from the Department of Justice and a number of others. Our transportation costs are significantly under budget from where we had originally projected them to be because, of course, we did not start in-person instruction until mid-year. And really the big piece is that we refunded the 2010 bonds in, I believe it was in September of this year. So there is a need to amend the budget for this year. The timing is the same as adopting the normal budget as we've done before. So there's a 30-day posting period of the tentative amended budget. We'll discuss in detail what that looks like at the May meeting. And then at the June meeting, there will be a public hearing. And of course, the board will vote to adopt the budget at that time. So are there any questions with regard to the amended budget?
Thank you, Mr. Englert. I'd like to start my presentation with looking at our hybrid numbers, if I could. Students are drifting in, parents are thinking about it, and they're drifting in little by little, and that's a good thing, because I do feel that in August, all of the schools are going to open up, and we're going to open up in the regular manner with face-to-face education. But if you look at the Richmond Square, they're now 68% on the hybrid. They're the largest number of and percentage of children in. And of course, the Richmond houses our 3- and 4-year-olds. And so we're happy about that. But they go 5 days a week, a half day every day. So they are having the kind of start that we would want them to, and I'm glad that they're above 50%. The Arcadia is at 42% in on the hybrid, the Madison 54%, and I'll discuss the Madison just a little bit later. The Indiana is a little low at 32%, the Sauk 42%, the Huth is at 38%, and the Illinois is 52% hybrid. And by hybrid, of course, we mean coming into the building for in-person instruction. If you look at the district as a whole, you see the breakdown, and you see the numbers of children remote, 1,313, our total enrollment, and we are 46% on the hybrid. But if you think back to last month, we picked up another 3%. I think as the weather gets warmer, as parents think it through, but also we're in the fourth quarter. We're talking about graduation, we're talking about final grades, we're talking about summer school programs. And so I think parents are beginning to look at this in a different way. So I'm really happy about that. But let's look at right now at attendance. And we'll begin, of course, with the Arcadia. And we're looking at 138 days into the school year. That's amazing that we're 138 days. But their attendance is 93.37% for 138 days. And you know, we define our attendance by the fact that you're either in-house or you're signing in on remote. So I congratulate the Arcadia. I think that they're doing a good job. Probably one of the schools that is most ambitious, and their principal, Mrs. Calvin, is here this evening, but they're very ambitious in that they're calling every day, that they're visiting homes. And don't you think that that is very ironic that we've gone back to the old truant officer model that disappeared some years, and we have buddy partners that are visiting with the principals as we go from house to house and knock and say, hello, it's us. Why haven't we heard from you? Why haven't you signed in, or why aren't you in school? But it's effective. But 138 days, the Huth is at 95.59% on a daily basis. The Illinois also is doing extremely well, 94.95%. The Indiana also is 95.74. I'm sorry, 95.32. The only school that we have been working with over time, of course, is the Matheson, which is at 90.55. We're not happy with that, but we identified 31 students that are at issue. All of those homes were visited, letters were sent, and what we've seen is an improvement over time. First of all, out of the 31, 19 students have come into the building because we did find out that these were small children. Remember, the Madison, the oldest child is 7 years of age, and these children were home alone. And so therefore, they really, I don't know if they have the knowledge, but children should not be home alone. And so we encourage parents to bring them in. So 19 out of the 31 are in-house. But in terms of news, those 31 children went from 70.9 to 88.4% attendance. And so we're monitoring this on a daily basis, because if children just disappear, then what are we saying about their welfare? So we're on top of this, and so is Mr. Hulsman, but for small children to be alone, and we understand that everyone has to work, we understand that. But when they're silent and when we find out that they did not move, then that means we have to make a series of visits. And so one of the children also, we couldn't figure out anything else to do. So the child is in school 4 days a week, and we put the child in base, and the child remains, and the district is paying for base, remains there in base until the parents pick the child up after school. So we have to look at life a little differently, and we have to do whatever is necessary to help families. All of our families want to see children get a good education. The issue is the influence and the effect that COVID has had and other factors. And so we're looking at this child by child to figure out what is it that we can do to make sure that the child gets an education, but also to make sure that child is safe. And we think when you're at home alone, if you're not of the age when you can make good decisions, it's a problem. So the Madison we're working on, the SOC under Dr. Morgan is 92.19. As we began to look at this, we see, even though they're 2 percentage points higher than the Madison, these are some of the same families. And so we've gotten involved. Some of those families have come back to the community, and they're living with parents. It's a complex situation, but as our counselors and social workers begin to look inside of this and to decide what it is that we can do, we are seeing the children come back. But I absolutely know that this community is ready to come back to school. I say that because I'm in the front of parents that I just love. And so I can't say too many times that it'll be time to go back to school. I remain very, very proud of our teachers. Look at these numbers. We're 83.5% vaccinated, double vaccinated from our 8 schools. And if you had asked me if this was going to be possible some months ago, I'm not sure that I would have believed that. But some of you may have watched the in-services we had with Dr. Watson, who is an epidemiologist who is located in Country Club Hills. He helped us with a number of in-services, and I think allayed some of the fears that people had. Some people felt tired, some people didn't feel good, and I was one of those people, but I'm ever so glad that I'm vaccinated. The point is that we try to get, and we have these 71 people left. You'll see the categories: 52 teachers, 9 paras, 7 lunchroom, and 3 janitors. Is that if you're exposed, it probably will not lead to a hospitalization, and it will not lead to anything that is going to be long lasting. And so everyone really needs to become vaccinated. But 83.5%, what is my goal? if we can get to be 100%, I know that may be a little too optimistic, but every day we find someone that maybe they read an article, maybe someone close to them has COVID, and they decide, I need to protect myself as well as others. So we see ourselves in this teaching bubble, and it's important to us that we not be transmitting germs, and teachers are doing a lot of research and they're encouraging each other. So I don't know if there are questions about the vaccinations, about the attendance, or anything that I've mentioned thus far. Mr. Simpkins, please.
Everything looks great. I'm very pleased with the number of teachers who have gone out, and all you guys. I get my second shot tomorrow. That people are taking it serious, are getting themselves prepared, because it's my belief that everyone wants to come out of the summer into the fall ready to start school with students and do what we need to do. So I applaud you and your staff, and those who have not taken that step yet, we'll be praying for them. But it's something worth doing to ensure that everyone is safe and that we mean business in the business of teaching students. So thank you. Any other board member before we move on?
Mr. Simpkins, I've never asked before, but our board members, how many of you are vaccinated? Raise your hand. Okay.
100%.
All right, good. Because when the children come back to school, I think it's time, perhaps we come off of Zoom and we come back into the building. So think about that for September, since everyone is vaccinated. But I want to put on a different hat. And Mr. Lights, what about my destiny?
Uh-oh.
Scooter. 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 That is correct. Fellowship. 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 That is correct. Equinox. 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 That is correct.
We have a winner.
Membership. MEMBERSHIP. Membership.
Correct.
Tomfoolery. TOMFOOLERY. Tomfoolery.
Correct.
Poblano. POBLANO. Poblano.
Correct.
We have a winner.
Aberration. ABERRATION. Aberration.
Correct.
Biscotti. BISCOTTI. Biscotti.
Correct.
Connivery. CONNIVERY. Connivery.
Correct.
We have a winner. Congratulations.
Destiny actually is here with Mr. and Mrs. Johnson and family. And so Destiny, would you come up, please? And Mr. and Mrs. Johnson are not shy, so they can too. But Destiny, our Cook County Commissioner of the 6th District is Donna Miller, and she wanted to send you this card. She says, Destiny, know that you are already Southland's rock star. Onward and upward to heights unknowns. Sincerely, Commissioner Donna Miller. And Mrs. Calvin, we have a resolution from our state rep, if you'd come and read the resolution, please. And I pass, so you're okay.
This is to Destiny Johnson. In recognition of her spelling bee win, we congratulate you on first place win 3 years in a row at O.W. Huth Middle School, and further expresses our best wishes in your future wins. State Senator of the 40th District, Senator Patrick J. Joyce.
You know what, Destiny, have you seen that movie about the bee? Well, we thought, and we are gonna let you open this, we thought, Mr. Simpkins, Mr. Murphy, Board, that she deserved her own book. So please open this. And it's called Destiny and the Bee. Actually, from every spelling bee that she's been in, we've chronicled her history. And remember when she was just a little tot? So she's got her own first book. I know that because she comes from a writing family. One of these days, you're going to write your own book. But right now, from us, we are ever so proud of you. Please accept your first book, Destiny and the Bee. And since you're masked and you're not shy, you want to say something to us? Now, I'm going to ask Mrs. Johnson if she would speak for the family.
Thank you very much for this acknowledgement of Destiny. And we actually took the time to watch Aquila and the Bee, I guess before the last bee competition. We have been so excited about this. Destiny is willing to spend countless hours studying for spelling, and it's fun practicing with her. And I really enjoyed this. And my mother was the original speller in this family. And I just know that she would be so proud. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, I don't know if you want to say anything. Okay, then I'm going to turn this over to the board. How about this? Our Destiny, and she's going on to the national. It's virtual. We'll see how that works.
Wow.
But we'd like to extend the services of this building. We understand that she has to be in a place with another educator. And so what better place to be than here? And so we can make sure she's safe with one other person as you go on to the national. I know you're going to be successful anyway. That's the way I feel about it. Thank you. Thank you. You know what? Can you get? You see, you're missing all of the fun. I'm going to take the picture. Come on, Mrs. Calvin. Spelling bee book. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. What a way to conclude a report. But before I make any comments, my fellow board members, any comments for our champion?
Congratulations. Well, job well done.
Yes,
Yes.
congratulations. Absolutely wonderful achievement and an absolutely wonderful family.
All
Yes,
right.
I concur with that, Mr. Simpkins. I have had a wonderful early experience with the family when they attended Nesby Junior. And I could see the success. It was just a matter of time before it full bloom, just like the beautiful flower that she is. And we know that she's going to be successful. So congratulations to the family.
Again, I echo congratulations. It's my firm belief that education starts at home. And I thank the parents for trusting us at 162 in this relay race called education to hand their daughter off to us and to trust Dr. Davis and her staff to continue to help her build and hone her skills to be a champion. She is going to be awesome. And we're here, as Dr. Davis has already volunteered, the facilities to continue in that effort to be a catalyst or a platform for her to just grow and build upon. Congratulations. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Simpkins.
Since we have Dr. Davis' report, thank you, Dr. Davis. Is there any legislation?
There are, at last count, over 100 bills that are on the table, but there's really nothing that has been passed yet. So we expect in May or at the very latest in June and sharing new legislation with you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I see that we do have some new business. All right. So I'll entertain some motions at this time.
Mr. President,
Mr. Armstead.
I move to approve the contract with SHI Corporation, the lowest possible responsible bidder for Cisco network switches in the amount of $27,702.30.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Discussion, please. Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Bean? Mr. Bean?
You're mute, Mr. Bean. Until you're unmute, you can put your thumb up if it's a yay or nay.
Bean? Mrs. Gordon?
Aye.
Mrs.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Dr. Armstead?
Aye.
Mr. Simpkins?
Aye. Thank you. We entertain another motion.
Yes, Mr. President. Move to approve the contract with American Combustion Service, the lowest responsible bidder for bipolar ionization filtration at Salk School and the 4601 Salk Trail property in the amount of $48,275.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bean?
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon?
Aye.
Mrs. McCray?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Dr. Armstead?
Aye.
Mr. Simpkins?
Aye. Thank you. We'll entertain another motion, please.
Mr. President,
Ms. Gordon.
move to approve the contract with F.E. Moran Incorporated, the lowest responsible bidder for bipolar ionization filtration at Arcadia, Booth, Illinois, Indiana, Madison, and Richton Square Schools in the amount of $141,500.
I second.
Thank you, Ms. McCray. Second, any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bean?
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon?
Aye.
Mrs. McCray?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Dr. Armstead?
Aye.
Mr. Simpkins?
Aye. Thank you. One more motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Move to approve the contract with Crowther Roofing and Sheet Metal Incorporated, the lowest responsible bidder for roof repairs at Richton Square School in the amount of $426,800.
Second that.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Simpkins,
Dr. Davis.
our architect is here and also Mr. Walzak. This is about twice as much as our projection. And so I'd like to ask the question for the record, what is the reason for this dramatic increase in the price, please?
I guess I was not privy to the original budget, but I can tell you that prices across the board have gone up due to availability of materials, availability of labor. Generally speaking, though, the pricing sort of is in line with the pricing that we've received over the last few months.
Okay, Mr. Walzak, do you have any other information, please?
No, nothing, with any specifics, but just as an example, anybody who's ever done a home project, you're looking at a 2x4, which used to be, a little over $2, are now selling for $8. Sheets of plywood are going for $60 versus $20. Everything for the last couple of, actually saying it's more than a couple of months, several months, and I'm sure a lot of it's COVID related. It's supply and demand, but everything is really seeing quite a substantial increase. I have talked to a couple of people that were building homes, and they're experiencing a 25 to 30% increase in the cost of construction on a home. And it seems to be consistent, across all states from what I can see, which is kind of part of the reason I'm trying to push as many of these projects through as I can this year. Is I think next year might be a little bit worse. It might tail off after that, but it's hard to say. That's a year, maybe two out at that point. But for right now, we're seeing prices that we've really just never seen before.
Thank you, Mr. Walzak. Mr. Simpkins, I bring that to your attention only because our projection was $250,000, $300,000. But after that last huge snow, we see that we must replace the roof, so it's really not an option. But even though this is much larger, it is the lowest responsive bidder, and we will proceed aggressively to replace the roof. But as we go out and go to bid on the washrooms, we're going to see whether or not this trend in terms of an increase in price continues. And so we will give the board information as we work through the process.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I think that's important to have this on the record. I am familiar with the fact that lumber costs and other material costs have been going up, and there's quite a bit of discussion about this. Hopefully it'll taper off, but no one's speculating on when that might be, but it's great for us to have this on the record, especially as you go forward with your other projects. So thank you, Dr. Davis. Hearing no other discussions, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bean?
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon?
Aye.
Mrs. McCray?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Dr. Armstead?
Aye.
Mr. Simpkins?
Aye. At this time, we'll entertain any old business.
No, sir.
Board members' issues or reports. We will entertain audience to visitors, if there are any visitors. Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.